Welcome, everybody. This is the TRHT Kalamazoo Truth Talk. We are live on Facebook and YouTube today, and we are just so happy you all are here to join us. My name is Stacy Ledbetter. I'm on the TRHT leadership team, and again, today we're here about racial healing in terms of what you signed up for and what you're tuning into. And it's so interesting today, this week, this past year, just so much has been a flood of events. And one thing about us here in Kalamazoo, we go with the flow, we turn with the tide, like we had to do at the beginning of the pandemic. And it'll be a little bit of that happening today. I want to acknowledge the regular host, which is Ed Genesis. We're on this platform. We're trying to take it up another notch. So we're on StreamYard, excuse me, as far as your panelists and how we're broadcasting. So he's trying to get in, and he'll take over if and when he does. But until that time, I have my brother's back. So that's what's going on today in terms of if you have certain expectations. So we're going to jump right in while we are seeing what happens with Ed Genesis. We'll jump right in and let the panelists introduce themselves, tell you a little bit, and we will go on from there with our discussion. Just want to say, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, we welcome your comments, your questions. We want this to be interactive. It's about all of us, not for you to just sit and listen to us today. We are a community, we are a family, and this is about discussion and growth as a whole. So I just wanted to put that out there so everybody feels welcome to contribute and to do that. And with that, I'll go the way I'm seeing the screen. I have no idea if it's the same for you. So Kamatai, if you could please start us off.
Thank you, Stacy. Happy to be here. Kamatai Mitchell. I'm the Executive Director of Rooted Enrichment Center and a lead practitioner with Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation of Kalamazoo. I've been working with these lovely folks you see on the screen for over 2 years now. And I'm just so happy to be here and talking about something that is uplifting and something we come together to discuss, and not only discuss, but form solutions about racial healing. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kamatai. I know that's right. And Ed Genesis, we see your name. Did you want to try to do a mic check real quick? Are you with us? All right, I'll keep the flow going, you all. Next, let's go to Zhao Wan. Zhao Wan, let's do that intro with you for the community.
Thank you, Stacy. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity to speak, to share who am I and why I'm part of this important initiative. My name is Zhao Wan. I'm a senior program officer at the FETS Institute, local to Kalamazoo, a private foundation. And I joined TRHT, which is Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. So a lot of times we get so used to it. So make sure you understand what TRHT is all about. It's all about truth and racial healing. I joined this network since September 2017. Captain, can you imagine? It's been a wonderful 3+ years. And now a part of the leadership team and also one of the local leading practitioner. Pleasure meeting you. So thanks.
And thank you so much, Zhao Wan. Thank you for emphasizing the TRHT, which is very important. We could take it for granted when we're in the work, but everybody might not know the acronym. So that's much appreciated. And TT Karen, you're on deck. You're still on mute. So come off mute first, and then we'll need you to start over. There you go.
Am I okay now? Thank you. Thanks. This technology has gotten me a little discombobulated, but I am so happy to be here with my brothers and sisters this afternoon. So I'm Karen Diebeck, and I am also one of the racial healing leads for Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation. And I want to give a special shout out to Bev Coleman if she is listening. She and I have been doing racial healing work in this community with SHARE, the Society for History and Racial Equity, since 2013. but I am so, so honored to be working with this incredible group of people that have become my family in doing this really now such important work.
Absolutely. And thank you. I see you representing with your TRHT t-shirt. You're looking good. I see you. And thank you, all of you, for your intros. One of the things that Ed Genesis usually does, and we're still going to have him do when we come in, for those who are not familiar, we like to have a foundation of just cultivating the atmosphere, if you will. And we have what we call, and Karen, if you don't mind, could you go on mute? Because I don't think I can control that. There you go. Thank you. We have a foundation, everybody, what we cultivate with, we call touchstones. And so it's where we lean in and embody just certain things that we agree to, because we're cultivating a space of respect. People are sharing their stories. So there's just many factors involved. One of the big ones is speaking your truth, speaking your own story. My truth is my truth. You can feel a certain way about it, but it's my story, it's my situation, it's my sharing. And the same goes for you. So I'm putting that out for all individuals. So whether in your with your comments or as we share here today, we're for individuals, even though we're all signed up and committed and work with TRHT. That's how it goes. So when you hear things that you can't identify with, that's not your background, that's not your situation, we ask you to also turn to wonder instead of like getting an attitude or shunning or forming negative opinions about other people. Just wonder what they've been through, why they feel that way, what their experience is, what their status is now. We have so many people going through so many things in our community, and even thinking about the causes that you fight for, support. Sometimes people support causes, if you will, because they've been through it and now they're giving back, they're reaching back. But some people support because they just want to help, but they can't really identify with the situation. So you have these different tangents. And with that, when you haven't walked in anyone's shoes, sometimes people don't have that capacity with their empathy or with their understanding. So it's good to just really think about that. Think about our community right here in Kalamazoo County. We have an issue with homelessness, and we're trying to help people as a community right now. But if that's never been your situation, can you really identify? We've been having some cold nights, and are you one of the people who don't have to worry about, don't have to think twice what it is to literally live outside every day and every night and lay your head and wonder where your next meal is coming from? And can I take a shower today? And so many things. And that's just one example of one societal ill that is concerning, that yes, people sign up to help with, but many people can't identify with, but many people are going through day in, day out. So we want you to think about those things. My panelists, any of you want to throw in any other touchstone that you may embody? I just threw out a couple just to give an example before Ed would lay them all out. But did you all want to jump in with anything? Cam, I see you shaking your head. I'll let you jump in.
I think the language of the soul, I would like to lift that up today, especially based on circumstances from yesterday. And when we fall into political ways of being and man-made ways of being, rather than listening to the heart and moving like a good, ethical, soul-filled person, then we find all the tension we have now in the country. And so that's what's coming up for me right now. Like, speak your soul language, not your ego, not your brain, not your political stance. Really, we need to be in our souls right now. Thank you.
Beautiful share. Thank you. And Ed Genesis, we see you just going with the flow where our panelists are sharing the touchstone that is special to them. Then we'll let you say hello. Go ahead, Jawan. I saw you come off mute.
Thank you, Stacy. I think what really speaks to me right now, the touchstone, is trusting the process, trusting the healing that is in the process, trusting the healing is taking place as long as we are all together, like the five of us, all the folks who are listening and watching this one. There's a healing taking place because we are giving time to deeply listen to others, or otherwise to share our own truth. I once again, what has happened yesterday, what has happened for the past year or 100 years, and they are choices we're making every day. Are we responding from a place of fear, anger, which we have the right to be angry, or otherwise we calm down and we get ourselves in a group such as this one, trusting there's a healing. There is a hope as long as we're willing to come together. So that's why my favorite touchstone is trusting the healing power within the process, do so in a community. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you. Karen, we'll have you go and then we'll turn it over to Ed Genesis. Go ahead, Karen. And you're on mute. You're on mute. Okay, we lost everybody. Ed Genesis, why don't you jump in? And we appreciate your grace also, everybody, with this technology. Some of you out there have these experiences, so we ask you to be patient and gracious with us just as well. Go ahead, Ed Genesis.
Hello again, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Uh, well, I'm going back to my favorite touch tone, especially after yesterday. I was trying to lean toward 2021 with the no language of the soul being privileged over any other language of the soul, which I like and it resonates with me. But to the opportunity to be able to continue to speak my truth, that is my favorite, because yesterday I wouldn't have got away with such actions. And being a black man in America, and me and a group of my friends, we would not have got away with that. And that is my truth. And I sit with that when I see certain things, the hypocrisy, the so on and so forth. So yeah, that's my favorite touch tone. And thank you for holding it down, Captain. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you as well. And I'm gonna let you pick it up while we have you. We just did intros, we talked about touchstones, had that foundation. So we didn't even immerse yet into the topic at hand. I told the audience we would be pivoting into what you went into, talking about yesterday's events just as well. But if you wanted to give some background or definition and flow regarding racial healing, please feel free. We hadn't gotten to that.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, to anybody viewing and watching, um, I'm in travel mode right now, so that's the reason why I'm doing this remotely. Um, but we have an awesome and amazing cohort, so it's just we hold each other down like that and support. So I really appreciate that. But just going into when we talked about having this as far as racial healing, this was an important topic, and we have the racial healing leads, which not just to serve as sorry, as an example in the community, but further, when things like this go on, that's what we've been pushing for. Policy change is great. I am an organizer. Um, Rallying back, you know, different ways of healing through resistance. Sometimes that's important. But when things get as hard as they did, or hard as they do sometimes, and the trauma goes through, then that's what we're getting together today to talk about. When people say the National Day of Racial Healing, or you're a racial healing practitioner, like what is that? And I get asked that often, and I'm sure you all do too. So that is the topic of today's Truth Talks, and we can dive straight into that, especially with the the high intensity of yesterday on everybody's minds and hearts. And I would like to just really turn that back over to Captain to say, um, I don't have the clear definition of racial healing, but for me, it is to continue building
We had a little pause there with Ed Genesis, everyone. So I will jump in As far as TRHT Kalamazoo goes and racial healing, let me just give the caveats. Many of you listening now are our TRHT family, but also community members who have experienced or been in events with us. When we were able to be in person, we did racial
Being able
healing.
to have
We did racial healing circles. In this virtual atmosphere, we do virtual healing experiences. And Ed, if you can hear me now, I'm talking because you were going out. So I'll just keep this flow going real quick with my definition. As far as racial healing. Now, we do have a few practitioners who are counselors by trade. Most of us are not. So I want to say that we're not counseling people, if you will, but at the same time, what we foster and facilitate and our practitioners of foster and bring out a range of emotions. We have people talking about things they never realized they would be talking about. So a lot of it we put to the person to define their healing, define their racial healing. But we tap into things and we directly are dealing with and invoking, if you will, conversations about racism, the historic racism and hierarchy of human value that should be eradicated, that we should get rid of, that all of us being human beings, and we have a history. We have an ugly history, ugly past, unfortunately, in this very country, in these, can we say all the time, United States of America. And it's a part of that healing, as far as I'm concerned, speaking for Stacy, is the acknowledgement of that past so we can go forward. The fact that we even have to cultivate these spaces, and many of you, whether on your jobs, your churches, many different circles, if you will, are having these conversations more, want to acknowledge and lift, Mr. George Floyd with his murder. His killing was a catalyst, even though there have been many others. He was killed by law enforcement. And so along with the protests, many conversations have stemmed from that situation. And so just even asking ourselves why. It's not only because of Mr. Floyd. There's a systemic, ugly history. And so for those who I don't know personally, my background is in law enforcement. I'm retired now. And so again, learning history, because I consider myself a perpetual student of life, constantly learning, growing, embodying and grasping history and not denying it. So the very field that I was in when it was established foundationally in this country, it was tied to, even though they weren't called quote unquote police back then, but capturing the enslaved people. Like it was against the law to run away from your enslavement. So that whole thing with being arrested, being taken back, getting penalties, physical punishment at that time evolved and went on through decades of just the Jim Crow era, civil rights, this and that, lynchings, so many things in between. And here we are today, still dealing with some of those very issues. So explain to me why, if the Ku Klux Klan was established in 1865, that they still exist today. For what? So when you take that racism, you take that hatred, you take the everything that we're dealing with today, that's what we're standing up and addressing. Because I'll tell you, on a positive note, I've seen it work. I've seen relationships be built. I've seen people who are opposite from upbringing, ideology, whatever, form and build relationships and bonds. And that's what I signed up for. That's what I'm committed to, bridging that gap, which I consider myself, my company entrepreneurial name is Black and Blue Networking. And that's what it's about. It's possible, as difficult as it is, just taking it one relationship at a time and addressing that as we embark and work on racial healing. Thank you, Ed Genesis.
Thank you, Captain. You really broke that down. That was, yeah. Let's just keep that momentum going because we are all, we all know what's going on. If we could take it just straight over to camera and
I think he said Kama. Yes? Okay. Hi again, everybody. I think I'm supposed to be talking about my definition of racial healing. Does that sound right? Okay. I think for me, I signed up for this work and I consider myself a leader in racial healing in our community is because being born in the 70s of multiracial, Black father and a white mother, it was in my face at a very young age that this was different and not commonplace and always showed up in my life. And when that is forefront in people's minds rather than humanity, that pisses me off, quite frankly. We are all humans trying to live the best life we can in love and in accordance to the law of humanity, right? The law of humanity is so much more important than the law of the captured land. So racial healing is about completely wiping out this hierarchy of human value. There is no person that is better than any other person on this planet. And so I signed up for that. When I look at Ed and I look at my child and I look at my father and I look at a man I'm crossing paths with on the street, I look at all of these people with the same amount of benevolence for their humanness. And it has nothing to do with how they look, the skin they carry, or their station in life. So I show up for that. Racial healing is the best solution to dismantle the systems that don't support any of us, regardless of who we are, where we came from. Thank you.
Absolutely. You better speak it, Kamatai. Thank you for that. Before we move on to another panelist, I want to acknowledge again, community, we see you. So I want to pause here, Ed Genesis and Jawan, actually go back to you because Mr. O. Joseph Harris, hey, Joe, asks, he says, when Jawan says, trust the process, quote unquote, I think that term has been grandfathered in, as well as it has become cliche. So my two-pronged question is, or Joe's two-pronged question is, what is the process that you speak of? And whose process are we trusting? I'm like, whoa, that's good. That's good. So he mentioned you in particular, and I know it's, we use that in TRHT as a whole, but do you want to go ahead and tackle that?
Stacy, so that was a question for me?
Yes, sir. Because you lifted that touchstone, and so that question, two-prong again, is what is the process that you were referring to, and whose process are we trusting? Because again, with him saying or putting in the trusting, that's a big word. That's a big word, and we don't have a lot of that going on right now.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful question. Yes, I was very much like you 4 years ago. Before even though the notion of dismantle the hierarchy of human value drew me closer to this. That's why I joined. But I joined with questions, with skepticism. A deeply embedded into the country throughout the whole history, and in many attempts, including the 1960s, 70s civil rights movement, with a shared goal and intention. And how is this one going to be different from many attempts in the past? And this new intervention, this new name of truth to focus on truth, racial healing, and the transformation, how is that going to be different and actually work in a world that is full of so much angry? And so I think now this is my personal testimony, I have to say. It's my personal observation after 4 years of working very closely with this group of leader, practitioner, community member, that I'm here to testify, but say, when I say I trust the process, what I meant to say, I'm trusting the decency within each and every one of us. We as humans are not even close to be perfect, but we chose to trust, to be hopeful. Yes, there are so many reasons, like I said, we can be very angry and pissed off with everything that is taking place. But what is my own choice? I choose to believe. So we're talking about a belief. I believe that you're trusting there are people out there willing to listen to you because they're also going through the same level of suffering, maybe in the different forms. And they're also trying to reach out to, they're trying to find a place they feel it's okay to be vulnerable, to share my truth. I'm not saying that process we're trying to create through the racial healing circle, which Stacy described, and ever since March, the COVID, the virtual healing experience, it's a process. When you ask me what racial healing, it's a process. It's in this case, it's a tool we created, but the foundation on that is a shared sense of humanity. Without that deep belief, any forms of processes and the tools not going to work. So I put everything I got, to be honest, for the past 4 years. I participate every single meeting, the best. I put my whole self out there. Then you know what? I got almost the same return back to me. Because the way I listen to others is a form of my care and love for others. People felt that. We have the heart who's listening, who's yearning for this connection. I know in a world such as this, in a time such as this, it's hard for us to trust and say, how is this going to be different? But for me, I gave it a try and I gave it all. I think this has been extremely helpful for me to go through and navigate difficult circumstances. I will pause here because there's so much more in terms of what exactly the process and the tools we're talking about. We'll probably get to that later on as well. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Jawan, and hopefully that explains it better for you, Mr. Harris. And I would love to have you participate in something that we do. If you Google TRHT Kalamazoo, lots of information there. We're going to be talking about upcoming events. This is a big month for us. We're focused on the National Day of Racial Healing, and there'll be an opportunity, hopefully, while I'm saying this, there is space left for you to join a community virtual healing experience that we're going to have. And I encourage you to try it. So, people in your particular circle, if you decide to join in, you get to experience that, learn about other people you may not know, and just go through this process that we have to get to know each other better as a community. Because I can tell you, I've been working with these individuals and many others for the past several years. And we consider ourselves a family, but every time we go through our process, and put out prompts or questions to each other or just get to know each other better, I just continue to learn about them and their experience, and my respect for them and understanding is continually heightened. So even look at this picture before you, our panelists, the diversity right here. We strive on that, and part of the process, excuse the overemphasis on these air quotes, is to even pair people who are as opposite as they can be, because we want them to hone in on what they have in common as opposed to the obvious differences that we all see every day. Because even when you could put me and Kama together, me and Ed Genesis or whatever, people who appear to even be alike, but when we get down to the root of our individual experiences, there's still a lot of differences until we create and talk and discuss and identify some ties that bind. And so, and it's just continuous. We tell people this is not one and done work. You don't get to come to our sessions and check the box like I did it, I'm straight. I'm diverse now. I've dealt with diversity and equity and inclusion. No, baby, you got to keep going. This is life work. This is a journey from here on out, and we encourage people to join us in that. So Karen, let me have you come on if you want to give a definition, your definition as far as racial healing, and then Ed Genesis, you go after Karen. Karen, I'm gonna get you. I can't control your mic. You're still on mute. There you go.
Unmuted me. Thank you. I want to tell you how touched I was by the beautiful words and powerful definitions that I've heard so far from all my family up here. This morning I was listening to the radio a lot and trying to make sense of what happened yesterday and what it meant and what were the solutions. And I was struck. I was listening to the Reverend Dr. Robert Franklin, who was the former president of Morehouse College. And he talked about the necessity now that we've got to have conversations with each other. And he did emphasize that these conversations have got to lead to accountability and change. But I would say that for me, racial healing lies in the conversation, the invitation to a conversation that is bound by the touchstones, so that someone is invited into a space with someone else, and we know that we're not going to fix each other, and that we are, that all of this is by invitation. Nobody's making us do or say anything, but the invitation is there. We don't have to set anybody straight, or we don't have to do anything except tell our own story and listen deeply to someone else's story. And it's in the creation of that kind of space in between one person and another, where we step into that space. And it's a space that is kind of a brave space, created by our touchstones, that healing becomes possible as we listen to our own stories, just hear ourselves speak and tell our stories, and the power in that, and then to be deeply listened to by someone else, and then to deeply listen to someone else's story. And that is, for me, the healing process that we are so fortunate to create together.
Can you all hear me? Okay, I'm gonna try real quick then. So I want to definitely lift up what Joe said about the trust, racial healing. To me, is again being able to have that conversation, like TT Karen just said. And did I just break up? Can you all
It's
hear me?
really, but we can hear you. Go ahead and keep going for now. I'll jump in if
Oh,
you can.
okay. I'm gonna try to get out as much as I can. So with lifting up the trust in the process, and then echoing what T Karen just said about having real conversations, but also deeply listening and being heard. Um, Being in this cohort, the first time I went to TT Karen's house and we all met up, I thought I had the wrong place, and I walked by several times before building the confidence up and saying, this may be the right house, I'm gonna knock on the door. The area suggested that I don't knock on the door in this area, because if somebody comes to the door, how do I explain what I'm over here for? And it was starting to get dark. Racial healing and trust in the process to me is I was received in, and me was in town, and we had five, and we broke bread with one another, and we had a great conversation. And I hope you all can hear some of that, because that is, I'm directly impacted, formerly incarcerated, and I was in there in a room with somebody from Laos, just a retired former captain, a retired captain, police officer, Kama, who does so much wonderful work on healing and with Rooted and dancing. And that's racial healing to me. And I hope some of that got heard.
Yeah, we definitely got the gist of them, and we appreciate it. So definitely heard your testimony about us going over to Karen's house, and just a diverse group of us, but your discomfort with feeling out of place in this particular neighborhood. And what would someone think if you didn't end up at her door and you had to explain yourself? So just for that to be in your spirit, if you will, just that discomfort or fear or whatever the appropriate word is that I don't want to give to you, but the way that it would relate to us is a real thing, you all. It's a real thing. So let's go into, as was stated, and Emily, if you can hear me, if you can help me out, if you can mute those not muted for me, if you're able to do that. Let's talk about, and this is for you too, those of us who are joining us. Hey, Miss Bonner, I see you, and Francis and Mr. Harris. I'm just looking at some comments I see right now, just identifying those of you who took the time to be with us. We appreciate it. If you all would like to share too in those comments, just share. Looking for now, if you at some point, I think we all know what went down yesterday in our nation's capital. So if you were privy to that or took some time to watch some of the extensive coverage, talk about what was invoked in you. I don't want to plant anything with that, just your raw response to what did you think when you saw what you saw? Because you could have seen some segments the rest of us didn't see, whatever, or if you want to speak on it in totality, just what thoughts came about for you, and now that you had a chance to sleep on it, where do you stand now? Did anything change? Kamatai, are you ready to start us off with that?
I sure can. So I first want to say because of a lot of the work that I love to do and I want to do, I protect my energy. And so I didn't watch anything at all last night. I saw a couple little shots on some social media and, chatted with some family members and friends. I have a friend who lives near the Capitol. I checked in with her. So I was really more concerned about my people who are experiencing this, who might not have the same tools I have to deal with it. And so I was checking in with my people. And I was also just disheartened by the ignorance, I guess, is the main thing. I'm just very sad that in this day and age, with the access to resources and books and conversations, just basic conversations with a neighbor you might not talk to because they look different, that we are still in this place. So overall, for me, I'm sad. I'm sad for us as a nation. I'm sad for some of the people who stormed the Capitol that have no idea what they're doing. And I'm sad for the people who will be affected, who are affected by this thing that happened, this mind-blowing thing that happened yesterday. It's really mind-blowing for me. And I try, when things like that happen, I try not to give it a whole lot of my energy, and I try to think about what the aftermath might be and what I can give energy to affect systemic change. So always looking for solutions rather than feeding into the fear or the pain of it is kind of how I woke up. But I did something that I never do. I woke up this morning and I ran. So I had some energy that I had to move through my body for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know you've known by virtue of family and so many friends and your business, but if anybody's out there who doesn't know, Cam is just a master with energy, yoga instructor, and just so much more. That minimizes everything she is, but that energy piece, she helps keep us centered, even in our cohort, and just with mindfulness and breathing and this, that, and the other. So when she tells you, my point is, when she tells you about her energy and she didn't want that disrupted and couldn't even look at it because didn't want to be off kilter with everything going on, that's like a real deal. That's a real thing. And some of you may be able to identify with that because you did the same thing. Just acknowledging here, Mr. Harris says, I saw America at its most vulnerable and lowest stage in my lifetime. Big statement there. Miss Gregory Wallace, I need to put these glasses on while I'm trying to be cute, y'all, says, so wise, Kama, good on you, good on you. And I'll go to some other ones shortly. Let me jump to you, Zhao Wan, with that same question. What did you see? How were you impacted, etc.?
I share Karma's sentiment. Was difficult to watch the news, particularly with my children, and they became aware of this. Then they really, for the first time, I have to say that they say, "Daddy, what's actually going on? That's the Capitol Hill. That's the White House." I did not know how to answer that question. What I saw yesterday was a total frustration, anger, and fear. I'm not kind of person who try to demonize and try to give the. It's rather I'm trying to understand why people chose to do what they did. It's got to be out of despair, disparity, anger, and fear. Nothing more than that. They can be easily just folks who living in the same neighborhood. What I saw last night is the democracy that we're so proud of for quite some time, is in a deep crisis. We can simply not take democracy for granted anymore. So we're talking about in a crisis. What kind of crisis are we talking about? Because of the workplace, the Federal Institute, in which has the mission to help support spiritual foundation for a loving world. And the way we see the reality, everything in it, the spiritual lens. What I saw is a spiritual crisis that is taking place for such a long time, that's been accumulating just like a volcano that is now broke and unleash its energy. Why was that? And what actually defines this country? All of a sudden we are so divided. Why is that? So so when I share there's some, you may have to forgive me, I'm gonna throw words, big words like love and trust. And because somehow we are uncomfortable even to use some fundamental value such as love and trust. We don't know. We're yearning for it. But when was last time I asked my children and myself, when was last time I actually listened to someone who think differently? When Karen talked about the huge value in terms of the most important part of the process, it's actually began with deep listening. That's a form of love. You put yourself out there trusting that you have the empathy and the capacity to listen to other fully. And so what I saw yesterday was absolutely, in this case, hard to comprehend. But at the same time, I'm not going to demonize the people for what they did. Rather, I want to go a little deeper, ask the question, why? What has happened before that they're so angry? How can I help so we can help each other? We do have to come back again. We do need to, because only united we stand. So there's so much I kind of share, but I'm mindful of my time. Thank you, Stacy.
No, you're awesome. We're doing good. Thank you, Xiaowan. Much shared, and really struck by when you said, your children are asking questions and it's hard for you to answer. So, to break it down for their level of understanding. So just showing and imparting that difficulty right there. Let me lift up Francis, who shared that, and we love you, Francis. Hey, sis. I really wanted to be in disbelief as I witnessed yesterday's events, but white supremacists have shown their whole behind in 2020, so I was not surprised. I'm simply hoping that the nation can see just how violent white supremacy can be. And so, yeah. And as far as, social media and my friends sharing on their timelines, et cetera, my friends, Black friends in particular, just to be straightforward with it, it was this whole thing with, if the race of the people doing what they were doing were different, if they were Black. And Ed Genesis started off with that, something to that effect of the outcome just would have been a whole lot different. And these statements weren't said just to be said. Again, it goes to historical, it goes to current, it goes to experience, people speaking their truth, saying what they know. And so it was just disheartening I haven't seen yet. I have to continue to do the research, even though I was watching a lot of coverage. But I even heard where they were saying some officers were taking selfies with some of these people while the disruption was going on, that type of thing, and just how disrespectful, disheartening when we're still reeling from other events with that piece right there between law enforcement and community, specifically, Black communities in this country, and the things that we're dealing with and have to continue to wrestle with. Stephanie Hoffman Hay she says, embarrassment, disbelief, and shame for our country. And mind you, you all, again, those of you who are watching coverage, there have been comments from around the world at this point, not just here at home. People with all eyes on us, the leaders, we're supposed to be the examples of democracy and how people should, or other countries should run their countries. And, many of our leaders and representatives have just been embarrassed by this. And just the comments we're getting again from around the world is just sad. And so TRHT Kalamazoo posted for you all, Rooted, the organization that Kamatai leads, just so you can get some more information in that regard. And I'll acknowledge some more of you after we hear from Karen. Karen, that mute thing again. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. I was just saying thank you, Captain Stacy, and that I wished I had had the self-discipline that Kama had. I was, kind of glued to the screen, and I couldn't help thinking as I watched the replay of what was going on about what I saw this summer on live streaming Facebook, in what happened in Kalamazoo. When I saw that militarized police line standing in the middle of Michigan Avenue, talking to the protesters. Well, they weren't talking. The protesters were trying to talk to them. The protesters, some of them were kneeling in front of them, asking them to put their weapons down and join them, the way the sheriff, one of the Flint, Michigan sheriffs, had joined the protesters. And, how our Kalamazoo police just decided that at, the stroke of 7:30, when the curfew came into force, that the response to these peaceful protesters was to pepper spray them and rubber bullet them. I saw that. And then I also saw the live stream of the Kalamazoo Proud Boys response, what that looked like. And I felt like there had been like a blindfold ripped off of my eyes about a truth about my own community, a truth about the deep-seated operational racism in my own community. And that's just how I felt about our nation yesterday when I watched the Capitol Police response, the same thing that Captain Stacy was referencing, to the mob that invaded the Capitol building. So I guess I feel like, more layers of blindfold have been ripped from my eyes. And I don't like what I see.
Thank you for speaking your truth, Karen. That was deep. The blindfold ripped off of your eyes. And this was something you said, operational racism. Just lifting that into the atmosphere again. Thank you for your share. And again, lifting others in the community who are with us. Elder Bonner said sadness. Denise said, today I'm thinking about people who desperately fear losing power that they believe they have. Stephanie Brown Boyer, saddened and angry, then worked to educate my kids at home as best as I could. Woke up with a new hope for change. We can't give up. That's right, we cannot. Um, Jawan, you got a shout out from TRHT. If you can see it there, you're always good at displaying our touchstone when things get difficult, turn to wonder. That is not always easy. When we see chaos going on, and you all out there, these touchstones that we refer to, for those who are not familiar, I mean, even us as individuals in this space, we're practitioners, meaning when we have these racial healing circles and virtual healing experiences we're talking about, those of us in this space and many others on our team, we lead and facilitate those circles. And so we have to live up to the touchstones and encourage and make sure others, while they're in that space with us, do the same thing. And I'll just tell you again, speaking our truth, it is not always easy. My husband's listening now, Victor. We throw the touchstones at each other all the time. And so just to have to lean into them and work on them for ourselves. So when we see things like this, to turn to wonder for something we want to say, this is a bunch of, and this is some mess. Woo, baby. We're not saying it's easy, but we just say we have to lean on them and try to do it to the best of our ability. That's why we say it's a journey. It's a process. I think Jawan mentioned, and I agree too, we have to grow to certain levels. I wasn't the way I was at the beginning because I was feeling a certain type of way too, especially when you're new to it, and you can sometimes find yourself thinking you just shared your heart out, but you could judge somebody else's share because you don't think they did the same thing. Like, why am I in here getting deep and the next person isn't? So that's why we just encourage, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. So I've grown to the point where I do trust the process, grown to the point where respecting people's individual stories and where they're at in their lives and what they've been through. And some things, let's just keep it real. They are what they are. Some people are just flat out hateful, racist, this, that, and the other, because we're combating that just as well. But we, again, have to continue to do what we signed up to do and try to cultivate that. But at the same time, we have teams and we have a charge where when it's about justice, when it's about accountability, when it's about transparency that needs to happen in our communities and our government and this, that, and the other, there's things that still have to be done. And we'll do them, when the cause is there. So it's just a combination of things, but we want to be educated. We want to be informed. We want to know our history, all in tandem with what we're talking about, that which brings about this healing, we hope. And that's all for us as individuals to answer. Let me acknowledge real quick before I move on to you at Genesis, Ebony Purry Hemphill. Hey, Eb. She said, I wasn't shocked. I was reminded of the Proud Boys' appearance here in Kalamazoo, lack of accountability. My husband or son wouldn't have been alive today. And with that, relating to yesterday's events, because I was with the question. So just don't want to make any assumptions about your response, Ed, but that you were wrapping it around based on the question we posed. Matt said, heartbreaking, shameful, populism's effect, the erosion of trust in public discourse. Inika Way, hey, Inika. Outrage and grief about what white men with anger and guns were allowed to do. Thank you so much for that. Angela Anderson is double A from 95.5 FM, The Touch. I saw immediately what too many of the media reps did not want to speak on. Embarrassed. America suffered yet another heinous blow, anarchy, insurrection, the allowance of such hateful behavior, double standard, sedition, baseless chaos. Yet I prayed and leaned into centering myself for peace and checked on my mother. Thank you, Double A. Absolutely. So much in that one paragraph that all of you are sharing, that all these different pieces, all of this. Hey, Reverend Gardner, I see you there. Systemic racism at its core of a mob versus a peaceful Black Lives Matter movement. Thankful that leaders and commentators also recognize and acknowledge openly there is hope. Thank you for that share. Coach, the infamous Coach Dick Schiltz. Hey, Coach, I felt deep sadness, especially when I saw a Jesus Save sign in the middle of the crowd. I agree with Jawan that this is a spiritual crisis more than a political crisis. Pastor Denise, giving me an amen. I appreciate that support. And I'll read some others because I see many of you out there. And again, we appreciate all you being here. Your comments are much appreciated. Keep them coming, because this will be archived. People can come back to it. So we want your voice lifted just as well. Again, by that invitation. So only if you want to, but we value your input. So we want you to continue to keep your comments coming. And Ed Genesis, you want to try again and expound on what's been shared?
Yeah. Can you all hear me? Okay, let me try this because I want to make sure that I'm very clear. This is my I statements, which is from the touchstones. I don't like the hypocrisy and the fact that I would have been killed, but I think very well that unarmed, they should not be armed. But I think full well that black people should take over the White House and sit on the front lawn and directly say what it is. I don't like that we just go with the flow. Democracy, in layman terms, is mob rule. That's all it is. The majority rules, and the majority of the people who set the rules in America are white. They have been. It. I'm not in support of what they did, but I do want to lift up that Thomas Jefferson said it should be a revolution, and he owned slaves, so I'm definitely not in agreement with his total ideology. But the fact that he said it should be a revolution, I'm sorry, at least every 100 years, because nobody should be um, bombarded with the thoughts of people who thoughts and ideas have been outdated. We cannot add anything to the U.S. Constitution. I feel totally. So I just want to again say two different things. One, I just don't like the hypocrisy of knowing that if I walked up to the White House peacefully, I probably would be arrested. I'm an organizer, and we can't even take signs into the Capitol building in Lansing. And then when I saw the hypocrisy of people on the front lawn with guns and things like that, law enforcement started as slave catchers. That's what they were. And that's the result of when you just go with the flow. So now it's not a surprise to me that George Floyd was murdered. It's unfortunate. I My first felony was I was 17 years old. My father was murdered by the police. I don't know a black man in my life that has not either been harassed, beaten, and or detained and possibly jailed and for not committing a crime. That's the America that I know about. So my sadness was only because, wow, I wouldn't have got away with that. Not because people nut up and change things and do things. In fact, America that we talk about, this democracy, they broke away from Great Britain and they said we don't want to play by your rules anymore. So they did exactly what the white people that we saw yesterday doing the things that they did exactly what their ancestors did to get this place established called America. And that's my I statements, my truth. They celebrate, they put it in your face, Christopher Columbus every year, no matter how hurtful and harmful it is. Thanksgiving things, no matter how hurtful and harmful it is, because they don't care. They set the rules up. We are not allowed to do that. And that's where I'm speaking from. The fact that I cannot, I'm probably in trouble for saying what I just said. By somebody will probably say, hey, that sounded like this, or that sounded like, oh, well, that's my truth. And that's my unfortunate. Yeah, so that's it. I hope some of that got through.
We got it all, Brother Ed Genesis. We got it all. And we lift you and respect you. And that's what we told everybody. Speaking your truth and your I statements are definitely lifted. And the thing is, for anybody listening, because you made some other statements around that, and and you said it, if they feel a certain way about what you said, that's exactly what this is about. For us to continue conversations. It's interesting, you all, when we have our circles, if you will, I'll refer to them as that. Oftentimes we are told there wasn't enough time. People get into talking to each other and they wish they can go on. And what we have said, at least I say many times, is We don't have any constraints on you. Like, you're not limited to this session, limited to this circle, the time that we're allotted. Exchange numbers, continue the conversation, have a relationship. Why does Ed Genesis feel this way? What has he been through personally? What is he saying? Like, if you have no idea what he's talking about, if you've never been through that, if that's not your experience, putting yesterday aside, that's how you build those bridges and gain a new understanding. One of the things that I do is do trainings and share history, if you will, because I'm still constantly learning. So I don't like to just always be called an instructor or a teacher, because I definitely don't know it all. But what I find, you all, is that with groups of adults, I'm talking about adults, younger, my age, older, it runs a gamut. People are constantly learning information that they were never taught when they were coming up. So we have some people think racism doesn't exist, or either we're over the hump, particularly now that we've had President Obama in office, that we're post-racial because of him. But if you were paying attention even to his presidency and the way he was treated and some other things he had to go through personally, just the black man part, not anything. I'm not talking about if your political ideology is different, this, that, and the other, just for what he looked like, let alone saying he wasn't from this country where he is. And so many other things. My point being, I've seen people receive information that they had no idea of. And they're just like, wow, nobody taught me that. I had no idea. But again, seeing those light bulbs go off where they're willing to learn more. They're willing to, entrench more. And this may be for another True Talk, Ed Genesis, but even the piece, because we're saying some very specific things, particularly right now in black and white. But with even in this space, as we see, we have Karen and we have so many others on our team, because we do have a lot of diversity, you all. But for our white brothers and sisters in particular, who are allies or working on their allyship, that's another piece right there in what to do with it, how to cultivate it, how to handle it. In civil rights era, different other eras of our time, there were white brothers and sisters in many circumstances that were there to help or wanted to make things right or do better, thought so many things were wrong. And how do we today, in 2021, for all of us, for all these faces and ethnicities represented here, do better, come together, learn about each other, get over these humps? But I think you hit it, Ed Genesis, with, and me wrapping in that history piece. People have to know the whole story, because some people, again, don't understand why we're even having these conversations, why people feel the way that they feel, et cetera, et cetera. And that has to be put on the table. That acknowledgement, that information, that awareness has to be put there before we talk about moving on and doing anything else. If people don't get it, they don't grasp it, oh, let's just, appease the folks and just do something to make folks happy and keep them quiet. We need you to understand and get it a little bit better. So anyway, let me acknowledge some of you out there. Max, thank you. You said, yes, I was disgusted, yet 100% unsurprised to see the footage of the cops opening the barricades and taking selfies with those individuals. And I mentioned that, Max. I hadn't seen it, but you said you saw it. And so that's what we're saying. That's very frustrating for many Americans sitting up there watching that. Commissioner Urban, see you in the house. What is often behind anger is fear. It may be more productive to examine the fear instead of the anger. What engenders the fear? Okay. All right. What are folks scared of, and what you're mad about? What are you angry about? And so thank you for sharing that. Janet, Ebony, yes, thought of Kalamazoo protest too, and the contrast of George Floyd versus the Proud Boys. Same at the Capitol. Black Lives Matter weeks ago and yesterday. If that was a Black Lives Matter flag instead of a Confederate flag, the losers, the traitors, the treasonous folks, a rioter waved in the Capitol, there would have been countless dead today. And thank you for sharing that. And that's that other piece. So, some folks may need to look up the Civil War, need to look up the Confederacy, need to look up that information so you have understanding when you see when you see people raising those flags or waving them, what it represents. In the Civil War, North versus South, that was over slavery. And the South wanted to keep it, and the North said, no, let's be done, let's move on. And folks still mad today. And whatever, let me just go on and acknowledge you all because, we're stretching into a whole other truth talk. Rochelle, thank you. Said how to create connection when there's such bankruptcy in our culture and no relationships across the quote unquote hierarchy. You better tell it right there. That hierarchy, which definitely exists. There is a hierarchy of human value in communities, in society, in our country. Absolutely. Absolutely. And while I'm reading these and acknowledging what you all put now with our remaining time and for panelists, want you to think about, because again, we could talk about the problems, the issues, the concerns all day. Let's see if anybody has any nuggets of, look, today, right now, it's Thursday, January 7th, 2021. Here's something we can focus on. Here's something we can do. Here's something that can be a tangent in our community right here, right now. So you all think about that. That's what we'll wrap around to, and our audience can start to share. Double A again said that gathering would have been disbanded literally by any means necessary were it a gathering for Black lives and for the fight against the ever-present health pandemic that is racism. Yep. Janet, quote unquote protester or a quote unquote rioter based on skin tone, like quote unquote shopper or quote unquote thief based on skin tone. All right, Janet, you better tell it. You better tell it. Francis Bullseye, Melissa Hart, Ali, I don't want to mess up your name, and Jean or John. Thanks for this. Feeling super hopeless right now, and we definitely want to do something about that. We want to have hope, and we want to have momentum and solution, and work towards progress and be an example. Our community be an example for this country. Rev Gardner, as you talk, what really bothered me was the social media comments that people of color were posting that depicts helplessness and hopelessness for our community. So it's interesting, just before I even read that with Aaliyah or Alea again, oh, I wish I knew your correct pronunciation, saying that's how she felt, and you're relating it to Rev, people of color in particular, saying that, and you're right, we have to have hope, we have to have faith, and move on this. We're not going to sit and just be despondent and woe is me. And that's why I'm posing this question right here, right now. We're not going to leave. And so, Rev, you can even jump that off, throw something in related to solution just as well. Coach, trust the process is such a great encouragement. Thank you. You are welcome. You are welcome. Hey, Sarah Ruggles. I saw more clearly than ever that United States police are prime arbiters, protectors, and enforcers of white supremacy, and the evil and corruption that pervades law enforcement cannot reasonably be reformed and must be held accountable, abolished, and replaced with a new system that serves the real causes of justice. All right, Sarah, you done laid it out. And I have to say, you all, again, I want to jump back to, and I'll speak for me and hubby, Black male, Victor Ledbetter, with our Black and blue. I'm literally, in the middle of that, straddling the fence, as they say, and not in a negative sense. Those just were two worlds, two very real worlds for us. We are what we are, born, can't change it. If people didn't know me, they didn't guess what I did for a living. So I'm a Black woman in America, period. And particularly now that I'm retired, that's what I was. But I was blue. I mean, a young blue, and was there for a long time, and upholding and working in that system that I didn't create, but signed up for. And I can acknowledge and know firsthand, is there a gap there? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I'm still committed to it. And so I don't dismiss or discount, like Sarah just shared, the feelings and where people are today, and as an officer, and what can happen and what does happen, because those are human beings also. Folks get all up in their feelings. They get upset, and hey, I'm risking my life every day, and this, that, and the other. Because during our time, during our career, we did lose a colleague, who was doing the right thing, who was killed running in to save people. Eric Zapata, let me lift his name, doing what he was supposed to do for this community. But what I would offer up to my colleagues and former colleagues who feel a certain type of way when they see community responding like this, again, back to the prime point and example of why we're here, to build relationship. Instead of getting upset and that type of thing, you need to realize, again, when we sign up to protect and serve, Like, you got to know that that's a real thing. And so when people, the community that you serve is upset, you got to lean into that and listen and turn to wonder and ask why and see what's going on. Because I'll tell you this, over the overarching thing, when you sign up as a new officer, I'm just thinking back, you go in, you get hired. I never remember getting a lesson or any information, and I'm not a Kalamazoo native, about the city of Kalamazoo. Population, poverty levels, demographics, nothing. So, getting all of this formalized training from everything I was wearing around my waist, the laws I had to uphold, but to learn about the people didn't happen. And I'm just being honest. That's my story. And a lot of folks that came through with me, they know that was the deal. And so I had to take it upon myself to start doing that, to start telling or teaching the young officers, which I had the purview to do, being over training before I left, to start teaching people about Kalamazoo, because the majority in this community, not being from the community that they serve, is just so important. These are people with names. Again, I'll even give you a parallel with everyone we're losing from the pandemic. When you get into statistics and numbers and just stats, that's dehumanizing. But when you know people's stories and their faces, and you can help. So at the same time, that balance here in this community, this is not a bash thing. This is just the balance of a lot of good things, a lot of helpful things. I was in community policing in particular, and not being a Kalamazoo native, very, very, very proud of the relationships I built. Wasn't just me. So, many officers who had an opportunity to cultivate and care, I mean, really care about the people that we protect and serve. So that momentum, that continuation, it just has to happen. And so with that, if our community members are just don't have the information, don't understand, don't believe, feel a certain type of way, it is the responsibility of the entity that signed up to protect and serve, who the taxpayers pay a good wage and salary to help them understand. And so again, Elder Bonner, thank you for being in this space. You have a lot on your shoulders now, and definitely some high expectations in terms of this community, in terms of that path of bridging that gap, of having that understanding. And this is nationwide. So this is not even just a Kalamazoo thing. You said, hopefully yesterday was a lesson in reality for our country. Exactly. And a lesson that wasn't new to January 6, 2021. We're going again historically. There's an origin to all that. No one should be confused. And if you're surprised, like, well, why did that happen and what's going on? You got some history to catch up on. James Herm, Germany banned the swastika and the Nazi flag under arrest and fines. Isn't it time we did the same with the Confederate flag? We don't need solutions now. Thank you, James. Rev, let the talks and the work begin. We need our white brothers and sisters to commit to stand up with and for people of color, not fearing the loss of friends and or family, standing for righteousness, period. Hey, Gigi, maybe a solution is to call up a person of the opposite race and have a true conversation. Let's get to talking. Let's just do it. So panelists, let's do that last round robin with you. What's something we could walk away with? What can we do? What is a solution? Kamatai.
I'm going to give you some really in the moment tools, and then I'll talk a little bit. Something you can do when you have pent up emotion inside that you don't know what to deal with, that makes you maybe want to do something unhealthy for yourself, is just shake your hands. So if you have capacity and you're feeling some kind of way about this conversation, you want to let something go, you can just do this and you can just shake it off. Something else you can do is just take your hand and take it down the center of your body to bring you back to centeredness in yourself. Think of your center and getting back to your center with intention. Because when you're in your center, you can make best decision for what you're doing outside of you. And then the last thing I'm going to give you is lacing your fingers and holding them over the heart for any type of grief you're holding. Because when I see comments about embarrassment, shame, hopelessness, helplessness, that's not yours to carry, none of you, regardless of your race. And I don't want you to carry that, and not in my community or anywhere else. You did not create this personally. like Stacy has been lifting up the whole time, it's our history. It's our history that we have been given. All of us have been given this history. We didn't ask for it. So for you to hold those emotions and take them personally, I don't want that for any of you. That is not yours to bear. But what we can do is come together like this and talk about some solutions. Take care of your body, drink some good water, get some good rest, walk in nature. And then maybe when you're quiet and still, the ancestors and God will drop in some holy, holy solutions for us personally, family, and community. But definitely what Gigi just said, we just have to keep talking to each other. We have to keep getting to the root, the why. Why are we showing up to these conversations and with each other? We have to continue to talk about it. And then we have to move into solutions that are in more of a community care and collectivism space. I think a lot of anger from the very far conservative right is they want to keep I have my rights. I'm an individual with my sensibility. I believe in individuality, but I don't know if we should be leaning into individualism anymore, because that's the reason the country has so many problems that it has. If you think about gathering people around you in your community to care for them as a collective, we can lean on each other more, we can support each other more, and maybe we'll learn about each other more. Thank you.
Thank you. And a quick segue, and I am watching the time, so we're going to lift all the panelists' voices. But Emily, also, if you're listening, Kama, could you give them a nugget about the Black and Brown Collective? And Emily, if you have any information or a link you can give, or articles or information, please put that in the chat for our guests. Go ahead, Kama.
Yes, we just launched a pilot program that TRHT and Rooted collaborated on with the support of funds from the Kalamazoo Foundation, Community Foundation, to link Black and Brown community members that have experienced racial trauma or racial pain to a Black and Brown therapist. We have a website page on our website that Emily shared earlier. You can go right to rooted.org and look for B&B therapy across the top bar, and all the information you need to know is there: how to connect, how to sign up for a therapist, and there's even links to all the clinicians on that list so you can learn about who they are before you decide. We have enough money to help support you if you don't have insurance or money to get therapy. We really want to destigmatize what that means and offer it to everybody. This first round is going to be for folks who've experienced racial trauma in their lives, chronically or old. And then we're hoping to make this permanent space and program for our community continuously. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very important. That's a wonderful initiative and access for our community. Ebony, thank you. You said you appreciate this space, and we appreciate you and all others for being here with us. Mark, just want to acknowledge what you said. You're so angry from yesterday. I know it's not healthy, but I also feel that I should be angry. And that happens, and nobody's taking that from you. So thank you for lifting it into the atmosphere for us to all see. Thank you for the love, AA. I appreciate it, Vic, and I do. Rochelle, thank you for modeling how we need to and can bring ourselves into this as soul work. Absolutely, absolutely. Rev Gardner, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. And sharing with us from Proverbs 29:2. Inika, my hope lies with building courageous community. Thank you for this gathering. And hey, Marcy Cheatham, my soror, I'm really being enlightened, and we appreciate it. And we appreciate this interaction, because all of this, knowing how people feel, seeing what you think we need to do, hearing from my colleagues here, etc. Thank you, Francis, for the love. Giving a shout out to Kama about the individualism is hurting our country. So she lifted you on that, Kama. Stephanie Brown Boyer, again, comment on the individualism being a huge problem and often. There is a link for you all in the chat with the Black and Brown Therapy Collective. So thank you for that. And with that, Jawan, did you have anything by way of solution?
Thank you, Stacy. What Kama shared really resonated with me. So to build on that, I want to make a couple points as my kind of closing remarks. I really have been asking this question. Most recent memory that I had, the civil rights movement in 1960 and 70 really the positive implication and it changed the country in many ways. Since then, so many good work, including the THD effort. Then the question is, are we any better off? Okay, let's just pause a little bit because that question matters to us in a way. Then many people, including myself, sometimes when I'm frustrated, I say, the whole thing is getting worse. Well, to me, that's not necessarily true if I'm reasonable. This is not about things getting worse. It's actually about the more we are uncovering and disclose the truth, which has been there from the day one. So let's just pause over there, which is good. We are putting all the effort to disclose and uncovering the truth. That's point number one. Point number two, out of disparity and the discomfort, like I could not go to bed last night, then I say, can I just move on? I had enough of this. This is really uncomfortable. It's making its way to my physiological level. I had enough of that. Can we just move on? Well, when I woke up in the morning, I really re-energized and say, no, I can't. Rather, I want this in the space of discomfort long enough to go through this. Otherwise, we moved on too quickly. We opened the page too quickly. We're not learning the lesson. Many participants share, this is the lesson we have to learn about where we are and who we are as a country. That was right on target. I'm willing to be in a place of discomfort, the suffering, little longer. So I like the one of the beautiful song by Leonardo Cohen, which goes like, there's a crack in everything. The cracking meant to be painful, but there is a crack in everything. That is where the light comes in. When you talk about a solution, maybe I'm not getting to very practical level, Stacy, you have to forgive me, but I'm talking about the conceptual level psychologically. We need to understand that suffering has always been a part of our life, but they don't define us. What defines us is actually how we overcome the suffering. Okay, that's then the point number three, I will wrap up very quickly. There are wonderful resources out and available in the community. Like all of us here, we would love to meet you. We're dying to meet you so you can have experience of the virtual healing experience, please. And the Kalamazoo Community Foundation has been doing a fine job, starting from 4 years ago, coordinating the good effort. So many resources has become available because of this effort. I have to shout out because I work for the FETS Institute, so I'm biased. FETS Institute, visit our website. And we have a Healing American Democracy as our #1 initiative. Essentially, what we're trying to do is to become a bridge builder, to bring people together, okay? The people who vote differently, but they live in the same neighborhood. The kids go to the same Angling Road Elementary School. We cannot simply shut off the communication just because they vote or they think differently. So it's really my personal reminder, urge myself to give the benefit of the doubt and give a sense of wonder. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we go to our last panelist, Karen, I just want to give a shout out to Emily Olivares. She's running tech for us behind the scenes. Thank you for keeping us together, not only here, but with our TRHT support. And shout out to our director in the house, Shalana Lewis, who's on supporting just as well. And so while Karen gives her comments, you all, those of you who have joined us, thank you again for being here. We truly appreciate it. And if you have any last comments and even book or video or resource suggestions, please put those in the chat also, because people still are constantly looking for ways to educate themselves. Like, again, wondering, a lot of people want to help. And I've heard this before, but they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I need some more information. And if you're willing to do that, again, that's by invitation. Please put that in the chat just as well. Personally, one of the books I'm reading right now, I have a couple going, is Caste, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. And also, Emily, if you want to put in the chat, we actually have a community read going right now. So I want to acknowledge that if you could put that in the chat for everybody. But Karen, I don't want to take away from you. So if you want to round us out with your solution ideas. Karen, I'm gonna come over to your house anyway with my mask on and have some lunch or dinner.
I can hardly wait.
With this new reminder. Go ahead.
So, when I spoke last, I think I was speaking out of my own huge disappointment and anger. And I want to turn to a touchstone that I really want to remember, and that this work is by invitation, not demand. And by invitation, what that means to me is that I can keep a trust in my own heart and in the hearts of my fellow citizens, that if this invitation to conversation, which leads to healing that we've been talking about, is a given, that there will be open hearts that will accept the invitation. And that's what I am really hoping to hold on to right now. Thank you. And thank you for just letting me be part of this wonderful small community that I can see, and this wonderful larger community. So many beloved people whose names I've heard as you've made your comments.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. Thank you, all of you. The diversity of our panel, and even our brother who slipped off there, Ed Genesis. We appreciate him. He's usually the regular host you all see of our Truth Talk series. But a lot of information, if you all want to peruse the chat in these last few minutes, a lot of links were given. And Coach, I see you again. You say your church, Dawn Patrol. Karen, if you could go on mute for me. Dawn Patrol is studying When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives memoir by Patrice Con Colors, is powerful and enlightening. And that TRHT just popped in the chat for you all, which is From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. And then it'll be a community discussion on January 21st. So keep that in mind. We'd love to have you all join us and have that discussion. Because again, right here in Kalamazoo, you all, the Kalamazoo community proper, that discussion has come up in terms of reparations. What would that look like? And again, somebody had mentioned in this space, both sides, and hearing from both sides and how people feel about it. And again, we could be a model for the rest of the country. Thank you, Commissioner Urban. I see you have a book recommendation for us also, Begin Again. And with this, I don't want to go over our time. Thank you all again. This has been awesome. Our Truth Talk today on racial healing, heartfelt, real, everyone speaking their truth. So blessings to you all. And we look forward to this journey continuing together. Thank you.